Hello and welcome to all our viewers. Happy International Women's Day to all the women and the men who are watching us today. It's Balance for Better this year, and that is the theme for International Women's Day. And of course, it is a celebration of womanhood, of the many, many women that we have in our country that are deserving of a lot of celebration, who have achieved so much, and more power to them and to the rest of the women of the country. And we have many such individuals in our studio today as well, remarkable women who have excelled in their respective fields, who will be here as an inspiration for every one and sharing their success stories, and also talking about all of that still needs to be done in order to make sure that all the women of the country are empowered. So without further ado, let me introduce our guests in the studio. We have with us Mahwish Idrees Khalid, who is an educationist and an artist. Thank you for joining us today, Mahwish.
It's wonderful to be here.
And we also have Sahiba, who's an advocate, High Court, human rights lawyer, senior partner, SNS Law Associates. Thank you for joining us today, Sahiba.
Thank you, Sana.
And then we have Aliya Zafar, who is the HR head of Askari Bank Limited. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And we also have Rabia, bakhtavar, who is a tourism and social activist and a human rights lawyer. Thank you for joining us today, Rabia.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I know that all of you do a remarkable job in your own respective fields, and an important part of Women's Day is also to be able to celebrate ourselves and be proud of what we have done, and to make sure that our stories reach out to the people and we can celebrate ourselves as well. So I would just like all of you to give a brief introduction of what you are proud of what you've done so far.
Well, I'm an educationist, and I don't really think it needs a lot of, when you're an educationist, I did it because I believe that we need to bring about a change, not just the people who are very privileged, because they can go to any private school for that matter.
Right.
But what I love doing is I work out with different organizations who are teaching the underprivileged or the less privileged, and I collaborate with them, I volunteer for them, I do a lot of social work with them, and have been doing it since I believe it's about 17 years now. So I feel very, once when I go there, I have a session with them, I see those people, not just children, but other people. Like, it started off when I was a child, and I would start teaching my driver, my maid, and this is how it started. But I think that's how I'm making a contribution, and not just teaching them, but I also like to bring smiles to their faces by bringing them the gift of art. So that, so this way, what I like doing is teach them some crafts so they can organize exhibitions, so they can sell their work.
And it's also a way for them to express themselves.
And they can express their ideas, and then they also get a little money out of it with which they can run their households.
Absolutely, wonderful. Siba, what's your story?
Sana, my story is, as you know, I'm a human rights lawyer, and my career so far was shaped because at the very beginning, onset of my career, I had the chance of working with Asma Jahangir.
Oh, wow.
And I was just a student at that time. I interned in her office. And that was the that was the start of my career, but it also shaped the rest of my career.
Right.
What I did henceforth was I dedicated my career to the field of human rights. What I am proud of as my achievement is that I took the plunge of going into mainstream law here, and that's not been that's not, women over here are not, women are not encouraged to step into the kacheris, to step into High Court. And initially, I also did not do that. I was in-house counsel to the United Nations and then later to the ICRC. It was a neat, clean job, 9 to 5. And, but it wasn't, it wasn't satisfying me. It wasn't linked to my passion. And my passion was to do something in the area of human rights. And with that thought in mind, I established a all-female law firm here in Islamabad. We have now presence in the other cities as well. So I think I hold that as an achievement on my part. And in a completely male-dominated profession, it wasn't easy. There were struggles along the way.
Yeah.
And so since then, I have and how do I use this position? It's a full service law firm. So we have the corporate and the tax and the company law cases as well. But Personally, I dedicate all my efforts to the humanitarian and human rights cases,
Right.
and I do them all on free legal aid.
Oh, okay.
Other than those that are, coming from people who cannot afford to
Right.
pay, I make sure that I do not even take a penny from them.
Right.
So
Remarkable.
that's my very small contribution. And I would also like to mention that at various points in my career, I had the chance, and like do most lawyers, especially since I had my legal education abroad, so I had the chance of moving to, say, another country, making far more money as a lawyer. But I chose to stay in Pakistan, and that's what I advise I advise all the young lawyers, young lawyers, doctors, all the women who are stepping into the professional world to please deliver to this country.
Right.
And that's
Excellent.
my message
Great.
today.
Great. Aliya, what about you?
Well, it's interesting that you ask what I'm proud of, and I've lived some life by now.
Yeah.
And you are proud of certain things at certain points in time. So when I started my career, I went into civil service, and I was proud of the fact that I actually was able to get into it.
Yeah.
At one point, I was very proud of the fact that I was able to get into UN. So these are more career-oriented. I'm
Sure.
very proud of my 2 daughters who I've raised very well, hopefully. So it's beyond that. I think what we contribute wherever we are as responsible citizens
Sure.
is extremely important. And I think my contribution wherever I have worked or wherever I have interacted with people out of work as well, mostly I try to focus on 2 areas. How I'm actually helping other people, what I can give,
Yeah.
and what I can give to youth especially, what I can give to women who are working, and especially working women have a number of challenges. So wherever I've been working, I've been trying to transform the organization and make the organizations more gender sensitive, more diverse, more inclusive. I think that's one of the major contributions which I can be proud of.
Yeah.
Over a span of 24 years of my career. But even beyond that, that's what I think my pride would be for now.
Great. Excellent. Rabia?
As you rightly mentioned, I'm a lawyer, also a human rights lawyer, and I've been practicing in Boston for the last 4 years. And I work in an interesting field. I represent survivors of sexual abuse,
Okay.
and the majority of my clients are men. And people don't really associate abuse with men.
Yeah.
It's still a taboo in
Yeah.
most parts of the world. I'm born and raised abroad. I've studied abroad between the UK, Canada, and then Europe. And so I've seen a little bit of the world, and also just out of interest of traveling. So, I mean, apart from the fact that I've always known I wanted to do human rights, I think that an interest started to develop in me recently, which I'm taking forward now. So I want to tell you a little bit about that, which I think is the most important.
Sure, please, go ahead.
So I moved to the US 5 years ago, right out of law school. And I found an internship in Boston at one of the most renowned firms for the work they do around sexual abuse. And my firm, my colleagues, my bosses, all white Americans, as they call them, like old money American Yankees, you know? So they'd never really come across a woman of color.
Yeah.
And definitely not a Muslim woman. So it was an all-white firm with the exception of maybe one Asian person. And so it was really interesting dynamic to go from a very multicultural London to go into the legal world, and that too all Caucasian.
Yeah.
And so through my time there, apart from the fact that I took pride in representing these marginalized people and these men that had suffered so horrendously, I think that my most important learning experience that paved the way for what I'm doing now was the conversations I was having in the lunchroom with these senior white partners. And the more that I got to know them, they really had some preconceived ideas about Pakistan and Muslims and women. And so I think if I did anything that is worthy of any kind of pride, is that by the end of my 4 years in that firm, I walked away from people telling me, Rabia, you're a great ambassador of Pakistan. Had we not met you, we would have thought that women were A, B, C.
Yeah.
right? And so that was wonderful. And I've been, though born and raised abroad, I've been an advocate of all the wonderful things that Pakistan offers and all the incredible women this land has had the opportunity to give birth to. So I decided at that point, because I had become fed up of some of the political situations in the US as well, and always sort of having to be in the defensive, I said, hey, wait, he's onto something, ambassador of Pakistan, right? I have a place to do something here.
Sure, you
And,
represent the country.
you know, and
Yeah.
so then Naya Pakistan happened, to our luck and our fortune.
Yeah.
And then I decided to come here, leave my job, and really do what I could to become an ambassador of Pakistan.
Yeah.
For the good. And so I'm working in tourism now. I've left law for the time being.
Okay.
And I'm just now working in the sector of tourism. And then in that sector, I continue to be that human rights lawyer, in that I work with communities where I find them, or individuals that could use a little bit of support.
Yeah.
And one of those communities right now for me is the Malam Jaba children's community. They're very poor. And we've just at the resort opened up free skiing classes for them to train and groom them. So I find my satisfaction, you know, my lawyer's appetite and the human rights part of me.
In helping those
yeah,
people, of course.
So
That's great, excellent. All of these stories of achievement, and of course what you all have gone through, point out to the fact that these things don't come easy, and especially for women, the struggle is very real and very different from that of men. And that highlights a lot of challenges that you've come across, and perhaps which a lot of other women do also. So like you mentioned in your stories about how certain fields perhaps were not as accepting in the country, or not as open for women in the past, do you still feel that there are many such hindrances for women, especially in terms of choosing the work that they want to do?
And the thing is, generally, when a person is deciding, or a young girl, let's talk about the masses over here, when they're in their high school and they have to choose their subjects or which field they would be choosing, there is peer pressure, there is pressure from the families. Most of the families, I wouldn't say that all families are like that, but they would rather that their daughters either become doctors or engineers, or
Yeah.
They're very specific in that way. However, when we come across other women, you see that we have fighter pilots who are women, and they too from certain communities which you would feel that the women are suppressed there, but apparently our fighter pilots are coming, women fighter pilots are coming from there. And we are all familiar with this one woman in Islamabad only who drives a cab. And she has been doing it for about 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
We also know about this truck driver who's a lady. And recently I met this person. They have started this organization. It's related to first aid and the first responding service. And they're creating awareness to high school students and university students and people from different walks of life. And they're starting a first fully women operated ambulance system. And they haven't started it, they're working on it, but just to imagine that kind of a thing is starting in Pakistan. And when I was having a discussion with them, I thought that finding women driver for ambulances may be a challenge, specifically for the reason that they're starting it in the smaller cities, smaller towns, villages of Pakistan. They aren't starting it here in the main cities of Pakistan. And they said, you have no idea how resilient and what ferocious fighters those female women, those women are, because they're really into it.
Yeah,
and that really surprised me. And I think it's a wonderful thing that women now, they are accepted now in different fields.
Of course, the potential and the capabilities of women
Otherwise
of
they
the
would not
country
have been able
are
to do it,
immense,
yes.
and there are many, many such examples as well. But we still see that somehow or the other, these are still exceptions to the
Yes,
case,
there are,
because
of course,
many
yeah.
other women are not granted such opportunities, or don't make it where they can, or
But
have
you
the
see,
potential
Sana,
to.
I said the women are probably ferocious fighters.
Sure, of
Unless
course.
they're not
Of
ferocious
course.
fighters,
Right.
like Estee Lauder
In
said
fact, probably everything that a woman does is a rebellious act, especially in a country like ours,
Yes.
where we're trying to
it doesn't come easy to a woman. It does not.
reclaim
she
our
really has
spaces,
to
of course.
work, and she really has to, pull her socks up, and she has to fight with the world. She has to convince everybody. Otherwise, there's a generalized, unfortunately, there's a very generalized image that we have of women, that she has to stay home. And not that it's a bad thing, But there are certain
it has to be the choice of the
Yes,
woman, of
it
course.
should be.
Sahiba, like you mentioned that it's difficult and tough for a woman to be part of the courts, and maybe that is why some women are not really opting for the field of law, and they don't want to go into the courts and handle the kind of experiences that they might will have to face there. Do you think that's changing now, or do you feel that problems still exist in terms of female lawyers being able to practice law freely?
Sana, talking specifically about lawyers, actually what you're talking about, that problem, those challenges are faced by women in all fields of
sure.
Pakistan,
Yeah.
in every field in this country. In fact, I will take you a step back if you don't mind. We are talking about hindrances in pursuing a career.
Yeah.
That's maybe the real top of the iceberg. Our
Right.
hindrances for our women are
work in the
not,
first place is
not
also a problem.
In the
Yeah.
first place exist in
Yeah.
pursuing education.
Yeah.
After that, pursuing a career. We are the lowest labor force, women labor force in our neighboring countries of Bangladesh, Nepal. I was reading statistics. We are far lower.
Yeah.
Why is that? I'm not saying that we are the lowest in terms of women going ahead for education. I'm saying when pursuing a career. We have the doctor prize, we have the lawyers who will do their law degree and sit at home. We have that sort of an atmosphere. So
Yeah.
now, even though people's mindset is changing, they are sending their girls off to school, but are they letting them step into the practical world, into their professions? It's a big, big question mark.
Right.
That is where, coming back to your question, that is it because there are hindrances? Yes, there are hindrances. There are many, many hindrances, but being a lawyer, I will tell you that there are also protection mechanisms in place
Yeah.
to counter those hindrances.
Sure.
Right now, we have a law in Pakistan which extends over all of Pakistan, providing women protection against workplace harassment. So that covers your hospitals, your courtrooms, your companies, organizations, everywhere.
Sure.
We have
Sahiba, we will highlight these laws, of course, which is very important for the general public to know also, so that they know what they can do in a certain situation, what their rights are, and what areas they can access. And we'll just take a short break right now, and then we'll talk more
Absolutely.
about this. We'll just take a quick break right now, and then when we come back, we'll talk more about what women can do if they do face challenges or problems at their workplace. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the special transmission on International Women's Day. Before the break, we were talking about the challenges that women face. Aliya, I would like to ask, since you're the HR head at a bank, how do you see a woman in a position such as that, where you have many men working under you also, and in terms of authority, do they take women seriously now, do you think?
Yes, I think the spectrum for women is expanding at all times in terms of work, in terms of work opportunities, which we were earlier talking about as well. So it is expanding, yet there are roles and responsibilities which have to be looked at by the females and by the males as well. So it's really about balancing act. It's not just one segment of the population which is going to grant you something. It's how you present yourself and how you also work as a professional. At the table, at the management table, or at any other occasion, the first thing that women need to do also is to be able to sit at the table, and they don't. Culturally, and also because of the system of patriarchy, women tend to be hesitant. They try to make themselves a little invisible, and that's one thing that we need to change. Especially for working women, they need to be there, they need to be out there, they need to not underestimate their own capabilities.
Sure.
And from the male population, of course, within the organizations, they also need to understand that, you know, this is here to stay and it's going to grow. So this phenomena of women working has been going on for more than 150 years at least. This is going to continue. In Pakistan, and especially in banking sector, this is something again which has caught on a little slowly than the other sectors, but now we do see a massive change. And in Askari, at least, I can tell you that we are going through a huge transformation, and we are looking at a number of areas where we can help women work and get back to work and stay in work.
Yeah.
So we are actually literally, for the exit interviews, each and every one of them is being asked as to, okay, what are the reasons, where can we help, can you stay?
Yeah.
So essentially these are the steps that we can take, and,
Right.
and at the management table you have to have men supporting you as well.
Yeah.
But you have to make your own space.
Sure.
And that space comes from being a professional. It does not come from any other factor at the end of the day.
Right. Rabia, in the tourism sector, do you find it hard to encourage women to come forward also and to travel? Do you think that they have a lot of concerns that perhaps you can help in terms of what you do?
So that's a good question. Thank you for asking it. I've been in this sector for the last 7-8 months since I've come to Pakistan.
Yeah.
And I have traveled mostly the north. I've gone through remote places as far as Waziristan for really promotion of tourism activities. And I would say, to answer your question, I think that, so actually let me backtrack right now. Right now is the time in Pakistan to promote tourism through social media. So the vlogging community is very active, and it's actually a very lucrative profession right now to be a vlogger in Pakistan. And any way that you can, through a creative platform, show Pakistan, it's being shown. So and in that community, I've come across some very powerful women that are local, that are breaking those barriers and traveling and though not traveling on their own for the most part, they are traveling, and that I think in itself is a huge accomplishment. So to answer your question, then I would say that we definitely need to encourage women to travel more, but it also comes from cultural barriers. We need to, set women free within certain parameters, because of course I believe that most families act out of a protective nature. But I think that women, unless they travel, and traveling I think is the best way to actually have experiences, is they're not going to learn, they're not going to grow, they're not going to be able to, have a worldly view, which is so important right now. But we're trying. I'm hoping that through a Pakistani woman traveling the country, they'll be able to relate. I know that a lot of foreign women are traveling through Pakistan, but I don't think that's relatable.
It's unexpected of a Pakistani woman to be able to travel alone, and that's also part of a lot of other stereotypes that we see in the country, where women are just classified into certain categories or certain areas, and what they can do and what they cannot, and what is appropriate and what is not.
And see, to be clear here, I'm not traveling on my own.
Sure.
I'm traveling with my husband, and he's always somewhere in the background. So the thing is that whether you travel with your husband or a group of friends, just travel. It doesn't matter. You don't have to travel on your own. And so
no, of course there are genuine security concerns already in place, and that too we need to work towards to be able to give that environment to women.
And I want to bring up
freely.
And I want to bring up, though it's a different topic slightly, is that a Pakistani woman traveling on her own in the country is very different from a white woman traveling on her own in the country.
Absolutely.
And so I think that when we look at these very glamorous social social media campaigns promoting how safe Pakistan is for women, we need to understand that the
Right.
white woman's experience is a
The
privileged
context
one.
is absolutely different, right? Absolutely. In terms of talking about these issues and in terms of how women do identify themselves to the community and society, you as an educationist, do you think that you see that there can be a change brought about in children or in the youth when we are educating them and trying to tell them about these issues?
I'm so happy you brought this up because that is something I have been doing in my own capacity, and I'm sure a lot of other people have been doing in that. And interestingly, the education institution where I'm working right now, the whole of that school, everybody over there, we do try to somehow, there's a curriculum that you teach in class, and then there's
Right.
a hidden curriculum, which is your actions and whatever you're doing, and you're imparting it towards your students who are there,
Yeah.
not just the students, but the families as well, at large. So we are trying to do that, educating them, teaching them tolerance, and not just the the regular things like you hear that a boy cannot cry and a girl cannot fight, not things like that, but there have to be other things. They have to be addressed, and children, they need to gradually learn while they're growing up. It should become a part of their daily lives. We are definitely working on it because obviously there is a huge need for that. I hope other people in their own capacity are also doing it, but we still need to work a lot on changing the mindset of people, because we do, by the end of the day, we have identified that you're a woman, you can't ride a bike for that matter, or climb a wall if you want to do it. And there are little things, there are little pleasures that a child may want to experience, but because you're a woman, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
So that is something we need to work on.
Yeah, Sahiba, in your work as a human rights lawyer, do you see that there are any such inherent problems? I mean, when we were talking about issues in the workplace or people not getting these opportunities, perhaps you're talking about the more privileged segment of the society, but in part of rural communities, what other human rights issues do they face? And in terms of them identifying themselves within the community, what do you think really is the problem?
Sana, that's a huge question. So the human rights issues faced by women all across Pakistan, and not specifically the urban woman, we have to start with the fundamentals. I usually, when I'm talking about human rights in Pakistan, I'm saying that we cannot even begin to talk about political or economic rights, because we have to first talk about the fundamental rights: the right to life, protection, the right to education, the right to health, hygiene. These are the three, specifically related to women, these are the three most, the threatened rights of a woman in Pakistan, especially in the rural areas. First and foremost, she is not protected. So although since 2006, we have seen many amendments in the law which are giving protection to women. So there's the Protection of Women Bill 2006, which has given protection, a lot of protection, like against honor killings, child rape, gang rape. It's given provinces a lot of power to help women. But if that's actually happening on ground, is the big question.
Yeah.
No, it's not, because we're hearing about women rape all the time. We're hearing about child girl rape all the time. Forced marriages, it's a huge problem in Pakistan. 22.8 million of our children are out of school, and a big majority of that is girls. So yes, those problems are there. Health, I would say, I'm going to briefly touch upon all three of these. Health, there is the health and hygiene situation for women is in such a sorry state in Pakistan, the rural woman, that 50% of the abortions that women opt for are because they have been forced into having those children. It's not because of their right. And then once they have those children, you're hearing about, you open the papers, you're going to hear about roadside births. They don't have facility. So women require a special kind of health facility different from men because they bear children. Do these rural women have that? No, they do not. Then we're talking about education. So is the female child is never the preferred choice for the child who will be going to school. If there is a male child and a female child, the female child is never the preferred choice.
Do you think the problem lies in the fact that there is limited access to these things, or the fact that women perhaps are not aware of the fact that they can go, or are hindered by their own families or the communities to go and access?
Sana, the problem, initially the problem was because the laws were not in place.
Yeah.
Although our constitution guarantees us all of those basic rights, but still the specific laws and special laws to implement that on ground were not as elaborate. Now I feel the laws are all in place. So the problem is in the mindset, and the problem is in the implementation. So although the legislature is doing its job, but the government has to implement this on ground. The government has to ensure, and it is the job of the state to ensure that all the children, girls and boys, are going to school, that they have access to health and they have access to education. So it's the job of the government. It's the job of the government to ensure that the women can reclaim the streets, that the women can walk free on the streets and not be threatened of being raped. It is the job of the government to ensure that the women are not subjected to domestic violence. Now again, even with that, the laws are all in place.
Yeah.
So they need to be implemented. That is where the problem is. To my mind, it's the implementation.
Right.
Can I add
Sure,
something,
please.
what she's talking about, that the laws are there now, and you were talking about the mindset of people in our country. I would like to elaborate on that, because the woman in each household, especially the less privileged ones, and they have to fight on each and every, there are so many battles that they're fighting. Even if they have to get up in the morning and they have to make breakfast, whatever they're doing, they're being suppressed by their parents, not just their father, but their mother as well, or the mother-in-law, or the husband. They will always be the second degree, the secondary preference of any nation in that way, which is very unfortunate. But that's how things are. And even though the laws are made, but implementation on day-to-day basis is not there, which I believe and I feel has a really, is more important for the time being in the current situation. And that unless that is done, the larger picture cannot be changed.
Yes, Rabia.
So I agree that women have a long way to go before we can get to a place, especially in this country, where we stand side by side with men in public spaces and the workplace and everywhere. But I also want to add some hope here, because our discussions are getting so sad and depressing, guys, and this is about women and our achievements. And so on that note, I want to talk a little bit about some of the positive things I've seen. And actually, it's not as gloomy as it looks. So Hunza, for instance, is a state in Pakistan. And in Hunza, I would say that women out-educate men. Like, women achieve higher levels of education than the men. And there's a saying in Hunza, and a close friend of mine told me this recently, that's from there. He said that if there's a choice between educating your boy or your girl, educate your girl. Send her to higher institutes of education, because she, at the end of the day, is going to be bringing in the next generation, training them and creating good human beings, So that was really wonderful to see. The other thing I want to mention is, through my travels in tourism, I have traveled to some of the most remote places in KP. Now, let me tell you just one story. I was in Waziristan and I was invited to a local home. Now, Waziristan, that's a world of its own, even within Pakistan, right? Do we agree?
Yes.
I met this incredible girl there that is doing a master's in zoology from Peshawar University. Her father puts her in a burqa from Waziristan to DI Khan. She gets to DI Khan, she removes her burqa, and off she goes to Peshawar. And she is highly educated. Other girls in KP, in some of the villages surrounding Sawabi, I've gone and I've spoken to them,
Yeah.
also because my in-laws are from there and, I have a close association. A lot of these women don't want to have an education. They're given a choice. This will surprise you. Their families want them to have an education, and when I've asked them, why don't you go to school? She's like, it's not for me. I don't want to. I want to be married.
But Rabia, do you think that is an informed choice that they make?
It's the conditioning. It's the conditioning.
No. So
Yes.
I don't think that we should undermine women's ability to speak out and make their own decisions so much. Women, first of all, they're individuals, okay? So we're not talking about one example. I'm talking about quite a few examples of women whose parents are educated, who have the opportunity and access, and they themselves are refusing. Now, that's not to take away from the fact that there are women that are never given the choice to begin with. And that is absolutely wrong. But there are women that I've met that despite the choices, they choose that they want marriage. And that's fine, and we should not judge them, because being a homemaker in itself is a job, and it's a wonderful job,
of course,
right?
Of course.
So I guess the bottom line is I'm saying is that there is a lot of positivity to Pakistan. We always hear about like women's inability to access education, and in my time here, while I agree there's obstacles, I also think that there's a lot of hope, and we're going in the right direction.
Which is why the four of us are sitting here. There is hope. Yes, absolutely. 21% of our parliamentarians are women. So there is hope. But why there is hope today is because we kept highlighting the challenges along the way.
Yeah.
So we can't stop talking about them. The challenges exist. But yes, the achievements of the Pakistani women are, I agree with you, Rabia, they're all over the place. I mean, talk about cricket, talk about being astronauts, talk about journalists, producers, writers. Pakistani women are on the news, they're out there. But we cannot, in the same breath,
ignore the fact that there are so many other women who need
of them.
so much
Open the
support.
paper just from today, and you have the honor killings there on a daily basis. You're going to see it.
No
we
denying
cannot,
that.
we cannot ignore those things. So. Yes, because it's International Women's Day, so yes, we need to congratulate all the women and their marvelous achievements.
Examples like these help encourage others as well. Aliya, wanted to say something?
Yes, I think when we look at laws and when we look at society, there are two aspects that are certainly, they have to go hand in hand. Another aspect that we need to look at are the processes and the governance structures. The society, not just Pakistan, the region, the world, we live in a society which promotes patriarchy. And in such systems, essentially, you cannot make exponential growth. You go step by step. You are taking small steps, but these are incremental steps. So overall, you cannot say everything is good or everything is bad. We both exist at the same time. However, from the government's perspective, of course, you need to look at the laws, and then after the legislation, you also need to see how work-friendly, how women-friendly are your processes. So a girl going for khula, a woman who has been raped, when she has to go to the hospital, when she is met by 5 men who want to know the story, and she has to go through it again and again, and the trauma of it, these processes are still not right. The laws are there, the processes are just not there. So we need to work a lot on all these areas and fix all of them. We can't fix everything at once, but we need to look at all those areas, and this is what we need to see. And also from what you were saying, you're absolutely right. Hunza is a great example we have. Yet Hunza is again something very special, and we know the reasons why, and the society and the community and how they are working together. So at the end of the day, the society and the community needs to recognize that there are challenges, and if we don't support each other, men and women, and if we don't understand the problems in patriarchy for men and for women, we will not be able to go beyond it, simply.
Right. Thank you very much for those words. Of course, it is very important to be able to highlight these issues and to hear it from stories of successful women. It encourages all of our viewers and all the women out there to bring forward their own potential and do what they can do best also. Just last words from all of you on International Women's Day for all our viewers, whatever you want to say to inspire women out there who are looking forward for a change and to be able to do something, what would you like to say to them?
Well, I am a big supporter of women's rights and women doing what they feel is the right thing to do for them or their families. And I, like she was talking about Hunza and mentioning how women, if there's a choice between a man and a boy and a girl, who should you educate? This is exactly what our religion talks about. When they talk about, you know, a woman staying at home, it's not like this specifying that you can't do anything else. We have such great examples from our history, from religion. Everywhere we look, we've got those examples. And these women, they should be given a chance to do whatever they want. And whenever they're given a chance, they do prove themselves. However, the other women out there, and unfortunately, because it's an English program,
Right.
I know those women cannot watch it or understand it, but those are the real heroes of our times at the moment, because they're the ones who are taking the challenges, who are facing the challenges,
Right.
and facing people in their daily lives.
Right. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us today. And it was a pleasure having this discussion. Happy Women's Day to all our viewers once again. Keep watching PTV World. More power to all the women and the men out there who want a more balanced society, irrespective of gender, and want equal opportunities for all. Thank you for watching.